My father was a lighthouse keeper, my mother was a queen. But life has a way of bringing people together. They made me what I am. Aquaman is directed by James Wan and starring Jason Momoa, Amber Heard, Willem Dafoe, Patrick Wilson, Nicole Kidman, and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. Before I go any further, I just want to say there will not be any plot spoilers in this review. This is the newest film in the DCEU or DC Extended Universe, or whatever you want to call it, or whatever they officially call it, we're not quite sure. But this film centers around Aquaman, who we got to see a small snippet of in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice from a few years ago, as well as Justice League, which came out in 2017. But this is his film where he gets to stand entirely on his own. We get to see his origin story as well as him going on a new hero's journey when he has to make a personal decision to take on his brother Orm, who is portrayed by Patrick Wilson, and take his rightful place on the throne of Atlantis. If you are not familiar with director James Wan, I really hope that you start becoming familiar with him after seeing this movie. He is the original director of the Saw franchise. He is the director of The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2, as well as Insidious and Insidious Chapter 2. He is mostly known for doing horror films, but he has also stepped into more mainstream action films by directing the 7th Fast and Furious film. And personally, I'm a big fan of James Wan. I think he's an immensely talented individual and filmmaker, and I have to say all of his talent was on display in this film. For the lack of a better term, I thought this movie was awesome. Does it have its faults? Yes, it most definitely does, and I'll get to those a little later, but sticking with the positives, James Wan pulls out every trick he has in the playbook, every trick he has in a box of tricks or a chest of tricks, and I just can't believe what I saw while watching this movie. I saw things in this film I never thought I was going to see on screen. Because when it comes to adapting comic books into movies, there are some things you kind of have to leave behind because they don't quite translate. And this movie decides to not do any of that at all and just basically take what's in the comic book and put it directly onto the screen. And the results are ambitious. I have to say, the underwater effects in this film are incredible. You actually believe that these people are walking and talking and swimming and acting underwater. And a lot of that goes into the CGI, which I think is overall very good. Of course, there are some parts of it where there is some noticeable CGI. That is something that is unavoidable within this genre. But I have to say, it looks much better than things we've seen in the past, specifically within this franchise. The action sequences are fun and entertaining, have a great energy to them. They're shot and edited magnificently. I'm sure many of you have seen the trailers for this film. There's this one action sequence that takes place within a trailer that is just as good as you think it is while watching that trailer, and even more so when you see it within the context of the film. So I have to give all of my hats off to James Wan, just absolutely going for broke aesthetically in this film. And I also have to give my hats off to Jason Momoa, who did absolutely everything he could to make this character less of a joke that we have come to know it to be. There has been decades upon decades of just Aquaman jokes of how, oh, his only major power is that he talks to fish, he can't be a badass in any way, and Jason Momoa made him a badass. But he also made him into someone who has a very convincing character story. The film is filled with just Shakespearean themes and plot right from the get-go, and Aquaman has to go on this very existential, almost Shakespearean journey of having to go against his brother, whom he is not very familiar with. And we have to also get to know who his brother is in Orm, who is very much his opposite. Patrick Wilson plays Orm as a very stoic, very sincere, very just unmoved character. And it really goes to show what the type of world is underneath the sea. How it is very medieval when it comes to its politics, and very medieval when it comes to its mindset of its people. There's very regimented, almost archaic structure when it comes to their society. And what is very interesting is that Atlantis is not the only underworld society that we are introduced to. We get to see all of the other kingdoms and just the character designs of all of them and the set designs of all of them are just fantastic, and they're all very intricate and all very different. And that's what I really love about this movie, is it introduced us to so much. It almost introduced us to too much, one could make that argument. We also have Amber Heard as Mira. Mira is a character many are probably not familiar with. She is also royalty in this film, and she kind of wants to separate herself from that for a greater cause, and the greater cause is being Aquaman and being Arthur and helping him along on his journey to the throne. And I have to say, Amber Heard, I thought, did a very good job within the role. I thought her and Jason Momoa's chemistry was really good on screen for the most part. There are some instances where they go for more sincere and more genuine, more romantic type moments that don't really quite work, and they're not really able to stick that landing. But when it comes to both of them kicking ass on screen, that works very, very well. Willem Dafoe is a veteran anchor who brings an interesting aspect to this film. I really wish they had done more with him. And Nicole Kidman, yet again, another character who brings a veteran presence and is a very integral part to the relationship between Aquaman and his brother Orm, and also, of course, the very origins of Aquaman as well. I thought her stuff, when it came to the depth and the drama and the romance with Aquaman's biological father, I thought were really, really good. I thought this film had an overall good pacing to it, although it starts off a little slow when we get a lot of exposition and backstory and just kind of setting the table for the main storyline and stuff like that. But once we hit the ground running and the adventure really kicks in, what we get is a global traveling adventure, which I think is really fantastic. When it comes to the negatives I have in this film, they're kind of twofold, and I want to explain how that works. Like I mentioned before, this film feels like a comic book come to life in the sense that it is fun, it is wild, and it is out there. And that can be both a positive and a negative, because if you're like me and you love this kind of stuff, you're going to enjoy it. But if you're looking for a film that is a lot more serious with really high quality dialogue and deliverance and just a more upscale, the more high art film, this is not what this film is. This film is more popcorn entertainment, but it does have a really solid story, I think, to back it up and to carry it along. And when it comes to the overall story, this is not something that I think you're going to be unfamiliar with. It's not something that is entirely revolutionary in any way. It is filled with cliches and plot conveniences and all that kind of stuff that we are used to seeing. So don't go into this thinking you're going to get something that is completely different than what you've ever seen before. And for me, that is perfectly fine because I had an awesome and fun time watching it. But for someone who wants a little more, you're going to probably be disappointed with those aspects. Another negative aspect that I have is that the character of Black Manta is at times really awesome in this movie. When you get to see him in his full comic book accurate regalia, it is awesome to see, and he's a really cool bad guy. Unfortunately, he is very underwritten. He is mostly a secondary character that is really pushed way in the back. So with all that being said, I'm going to give Aquaman a 3.8 out of 5 stars. It is a fun, awesome comic book movie. Aquaman is a badass. Mira is a badass. I really love the Shakespearean themes and the story and just the overall character arc of Aquaman, and I can't wait to see them do more with this character and hopefully build upon things that they've now established in this film. So that has been my review of Aquaman. If you like this video, please check out the other videos on my channel.